So now we're going to face the moon. And a very funny thing has happened. Oh, shoot. I did it again.
Rotation.
Forgot to go under rotation before rotating. A very funny thing has happened in my room. The sun is now going through one of my wind shades, and I actually have a Mars globe sitting on the ground right now. And part of the sun is on one side of Mars, and there's shadow on the other side of Mars. So I don't know if you consider this funny, but I think it's kind of funny that the sun is on my Mars globe, because it's kind of like, well, now it shows the Terminator on Mars, and whatever. If you're a space nerd, you'll like it. 10 times the normal rate, 100 times the normal rate, 1,000 times the normal rate. And now we're going to sit here until we approach the moon. By the way, we've had an Earth frame of reference up until this point. Now, because the Earth is no longer the strongest gravitationally, the Sun is, but we don't care about the Sun, we care about the Moon, we're paying attention to the Moon. So that is... so now that means we are on a... we are now on the... what do you call it? The frame of reference of the Moon. You'll note that this orbit is starting to close as we get closer to the Moon. This is because its gravity is becoming stronger and starting to draw us in, which is exactly what we want. There might have to be one final course correction maneuver to help with the specific altitude that we're targeting. We want to have a paraloon of 50 kilometers, and given that the mid-course correction budget is 200 meters per second, we're just fine in terms of... we're perfectly fine in terms of Delta V budget. We've actually been under budget, which is great. So, no worries there in terms of fuel. Okay. When we hit 10%, I'm going to actually... okay. Save the game. I am so lucky I caught that, because the game just loves to crash right here. I could have lost all of this, and we're at a really great stage right now. The mission is doing excellent, and we've now reached 10% of the gravitational force from the Moon. So now I'm reducing the time warp to 100 times the normal rate. How many days has it been? Hang on a second. It's been 260... It's been exactly 3 days. So I think in my calculation for time, I used 2 pi instead of pi. So this just gives you an example of why computers are superior. Is because they can eliminate the need for human error, because computers really don't make these kinds of errors. So this is why it's so much better to use the computer than the person. Yes, I could have checked my math, but I want to do other stuff today besides this video. So, yeah. Oh, don't care about that. Oh, yes. One thing that we need to do now is keep an eye on our inclination, which is 53 degrees, and that's actually really good. I'm going to change the map now to the Moon. And let's target the fictional spaceport of Brighton Beach. And the it's at 41 degrees north, so not bad for inclination. So we're just approaching rendezvous now. Meanwhile, this is a last quarter Earth, which means we have a first quarter moon. Yeah. But for us, of course, that's different because we're at the moon. So duh. When the moon reaches 20% of the gravitational force, then I'm going to do another mid-course correction maneuver. Actually, right now, I'm a little bit upset that I did the first mid-course correction maneuver, because now I'm going to change this to altitude, and you'll note that we're now going to crash into the moon. So that's a little bit unfortunate. So we're going to have to use outward burn to take care of that. And we also need to wait for this inclination to finally stabilize itself before we can really do an inclination burn. But I believe that is changing quickly because we have such a low energy. Or rather, I should say, such a absolute low energy. There we go. We are now 50,000 kilometers from the moon. And the G value will really start to take off, and very soon the moon will be the strongest gravitational object in our gravity field. Where's the Earth? Oh, has it gone all the way around? It has not. Oh, there it is. It's just hiding. It's up here. Okay, it's time to do another mid-course correction maneuver. So I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to do the math necessary for this mid-course correction maneuver. See you in a few minutes. Okay, so I decided instead of doing the math, I'll just do 2 corrections because Brighton Beach, I'm not exactly sure what our... I'm not exactly sure what our... Oh, that was interesting. Well, oh shoot, we need to change the HUD. There we go. That's why that was... Wait a minute. Oh, no, that's right. So anyway, as I was saying, we'd have to do, because the moon doesn't rotate, now we have to get our argument of perigee and the right ascension... No, we have to get the right ascension of the ascending node correct in order for us to land at Brighton Beach. Or we could do a larger inclination burn. And for the easier math, I opt for a secondary inclination burn. Of course, in real life, you would all do the thing in one maneuver just to be careful. So now we're going to raise this until it gets above 50 kilometers. Oop, right. Oh, man.
Translation.
Just trimming a little bit. There's 50.
Rotation.
It's going to change, but that's okay. There it went again. Okay. And now it's just more sitting and drifting, but I have to stop the video again. Okay. Again, we're drifting in now at 100 times the normal rate until the map decides to display our orbit. I feel like this thing is jacked up for some reason. This should be displaying an orbit plane by now. We have an inclination of 18 degrees on the moon. That's interesting. Alright, so we'll just keep drifting. Okay, so now we're going to have to focus on the lunar rendezvous. So the math for the lunar rendezvous, we had to figure out the energy infinite at the moon. And the way we figure out that is energy infinite moon. Okay, well the first thing is we have the velocity at the parking orbit. The velocity at the parking orbit is 1,655 meters per second. So then we have to figure out how much delta V we're going to have to do. And the answer is in the vis-viva equation. So now we have to plug it in before. The V squared equals mu times 2 over the 2 over the radius minus 1 over the semi-major axis, and that will give us the velocity at V infinite moon, I guess, as you would say. Yes. So the velocity of the moon going around the Earth in its orbit is 1,022 meters per second. In our transfer orbit that we took, the translunar injection, if the moon was not here, we would have been going 173 meters per second, which means that V infinite moon is now the velocity of the moon going around the Earth minus what our orbit was arriving, which is 1,022 minus 173, so V infinite moon is 149 meters per second. The next thing we need to do is figure out what the energy infinite moon is. And the energy infinite moon, where did I calculate that? Energy infinite moon. Where was that? Okay. Energy infinite moon is the velocity infinite moon squared divided by 2. And then that gives us the energy infinite at the moon. And then what you do is you find velocity hyperbolic, and that equals the square root of 2 times the moon's mu, which is the mass of the moon, which is like 7.85 times 10 to the 22 kilograms, I think. And then you divide that by the radius of the parking orbit, which is the perigee. And that happens to be 50 kilometers plus the radius of the moon, which I think is 1,735 kilometers. And then you add that to E infinite moon, which I got to 360,000. Then we find out that V hyperbolic is 2,490 meters per second. That should be the velocity at the periapsis. And then we have to do delta V retro, which is the hyperbolic minus the parking orbit speed. So 2,490 minus 1,655. And then we get a delta V retro of 835 meters per second. That is what we must burn to get into a circular orbit around the moon. And I see the map has finally fixed itself. So now we can finally do mid-course correction 3. So now we turn orbit plus, and we increase inclination until the ground track goes over Brighton Beach spaceport. The reason that it's important that we get it over this is because the ground track will not shift west because the moon only rotates once every 27 days, which means we would be in a lot of trouble, if not otherwise. So I'm rotating with the orbit positive vector, so we can have the most efficient burn And yes, I understand there's going to be a lot of pointing errors in this, which means we're probably going to have to do, yes, we're going to have to do another mid-course correction maneuver. Should be quite simple, though. Oh, shoot. Brighton Beach is in night, which is not good, because if it's a night, then that means that we're going to have to land at night. Sucks. Okay.
Translation.
Whoops.
Rotation.
We went outward. Or... hang on a second. There we go. Do things the easy way. So now I'm going to fire using some different engines.
Translation.
And it's going to be this one. Whoops. Missed. Wasn't paying attention. Okay, that's the final burn that we do.
Rotation.
And we're now not moving, so now we warp again 100 times the normal rate and prepare for rendezvous. So, the moon, we will have to kill off 835 meters per second. Our current mass is 15,694 kilograms and 380 kilonewtons. 15,694 kilograms, which means we have 24.2 meters per second squared acceleration, which means 835 divided by 24.2, which means, assuming a linear case, which of course will not be the case, but close enough, we need 35 seconds of burn time to decelerate, or in the world of acceleration, 17.25 seconds before periapsis, or parallel. Okay, so this velocity here should top out at 2,490. If it does not, then we have to redo the math and we could be in trouble. But it should be correct. Or at least close. And you'll notice that the orbit has perturbed again, but 10 kilometers off does not make much of a difference. So I'm not that concerned about that. Okay, this is it. I'm going to now activate the prograde autopilot. And we can go ahead and arm the hover doors, since we'll be using those in a couple hours. Wait for us to get into a nice stable orbit. And now I will hold this until we get to a few hundred seconds away from burn time. So at that point, I will then flip the engines around and go retrograde, because this is going to be a very long burn. It's going to be the second longest burn of the mission. The final burn will be at the very end, where we deorbit and land. And that is actually the hardest part, weirdly enough. Oops, save, must save. Okay, good, we're good. It just loves to crash like this. Could you imagine if we put a space telescope this close to the moon, what we'd be able to see? It'd be fantastic. Ten minutes before the burn. Okay, we're now 5 minutes before the burn, so I'm going to run the retrograde autopilot and prepare to burn the engines in reverse. And remember, when the periapsis time says 17.25 seconds, that's when we hit the engines, because we're accelerating. Let's just do an orbiting check real quick. Strobe at the moon? Seriously? That's not necessary. Huh, that's actually somewhat realistic. Wait a minute. No, we're in the sun. That's not realistic, then. Okay, fast forwarding again. We're in position. Here is the moon. We're going to pass within 60 kilometers of the surface. Okay, we're now just under a minute from the burn. Our velocity should have been 2,490, and look at that, we're within about 3 meters per second. So given all those mid-course correction maneuvers, our math is still very accurate. Impressive. Right, so because I'm doing an integrated burn, I'm going to try and get this right at 19.25 seconds is when I hit the engines, and then I integrate it. So let's try and do that. 10 seconds now. And here it comes. 19.25, 18, 17, 16, 15.25. Burning. And the target speed is 1,655 meters per second. comes main engine cutoff right now. That's it. We're in a circular orbit around the moon. Target speed 1655. It's now 1649. The reason being is because we're not at 50 kilometers. We did the math for 50 kilometers, but we're at 60, which is just fine. We are in a perfect condition now to deorbit and land once it's time. So now the only thing left to do is the deorbiting maneuver, and that needs 2063 delta V. And noting, I did the math wrong again. I used 380 kilonewtons when I should have used 320 kilonewtons because I didn't turn on the boosters. Meaning that, as you'll notice here, it's only 380 when you have the boosters on. And meaning that we were not able to get the eccentricity down to 0, but 0043 is close enough. I'm okay with that. So what do I need to do now? Now I need to figure out how long it's going to take us to slow down. We're going at 1,650 meters per second. Actually, I need to do the calculation of 320 kilonewtons. Our current mass is 15,394 kilograms, which means 20.78, which is exactly what the acceleration was read on here. Perfect. We're now at 1,650 divided by 20.78, which means we need 79 seconds to slow down. And as we all know, the calculation is D equals 1/2 GT squared. So let's go ahead and run that number. 79.4 squared times 1/2, and it was 24.88, I think, or something. So we need 78.42 kilometers to slow down. That's when we hit the brakes at the base. Deactivating retrograde autopilot, and we're going to go ahead and store the antenna. So we're at the moon now. Let's do a linear delta V estimate. We have 1,561. Okay, let's just do it this way. We've done at least 8,000 plus 3,000 plus 800. So in 84% of our burn did a delta V of 11,800, which means each delta V, or each percentage point, will give us about 140 meters per second of delta V. So times 16, and now we have that our maximum capability linear, which means we have a little bit more, is now 2247. That's pretty darn close. So I'm actually going to do a cross feed right now after restarting the video again. Just in case, we're going to do a cross feed now. So we're going to jump this up to 20 if we can make it. If we can't, that's okay. Yeah, we're probably not going to make 20, but that's okay. I mean, we'll have a lot. Okay, that should be good. That should give us plenty of delta V for the deceleration. So one more thing that I did is deceleration delta V, which is obviously whatever delta V you need to drop this to 0. So it's just 1655. But then you have to add on the delta V that we would have been if we free fell to the moon at this altitude. because we have kinetic and potential energy, and we have to kill both of them. So what I did was I figured out the velocity that we would be falling at the ground, and looked at it with an energy perspective and said, if our velocity was this, if we fell straight to the ground, what would our velocity be at the ground that we would have to kill? And as long as we don't hover at any time, the force is conserved, and we can't lose. So let's go ahead and accelerate time until we get closer to Brighton Beach. I'm now going to configure the radios in preparation for landing. There it is, comm nav. We want... No, we don't want that. Yeah. Brighton Beach. VOR 116.30. Pad 1 132 decimal 20. VOR VTOL is configured properly. Okay, let's go to 100 times normal rate now. And we're going to pass into lunar night now. Okay, we're now 3,000 kilometers from base. We need to prepare for landing. Put the seatbelt on. We do not need ship control on atmospheric auto because there's no atmosphere on the moon. We're going to activate the backup system. Keep Windows filter on high because the moon has no atmosphere. We're going to open the retro door as opposed to closing it because we're going to need it. And we're going to open the hover door because we'll need it as well. And now that we are in space, night, there's no sun. We can go ahead and close the radiator without problem now. So we're retracting the radiator. We're still looking just fine on oxygen and everything else. Oh, I forgot to turn this one off. We want the auto air intake off because we're not going to use it. And we'll turn the strobe on because we're approaching a base. Okay, radiator shut. We should get confirmation any moment. And yes, the radiator has been fully retracted. Okay, so I'm going to start preparing some autopilots. I believe we have a list of available autopilots in the flight computer. In 12, maybe? Oh, yes, here they are. Okay, horizon level. Pro 200 spec 5, Pro 200 spec 6 hold altimeter, or hold altitude. Those two are going to be very important. So I'm going to load Pro 200 Spec 5 up right now. If you don't know why we're using hover engines and RCS autopilots, you need to watch my first trip to the moon. Delta Glider to the Moon tutorial 12, maybe? So here's the rule. We're going to now decelerate when we reach the magic number of 78 kilometers to 0. When we reach 0, we're going to let the gravity of the moon take over the craft until we reach 50 meters per second. At 50 meters per second, we're going to hold that speed until we start to get close to the ground. Okay, here is 2,000 kilometers. So now I'm going to go off of orbit onto surface, change the HUD to surface, and rotate to horizon level. And continue warping time at 10 times the normal rate. I never really second checked the inclination here, but it looks like we have an opportunity to fidget with it a bit.
Translation.
Oh, whoa. Okay. 2 buttons at once. Very dangerous. I think I'm asking too much of my RCS system.
Rotation.
And since our hover engines are open, we can actually use them to burn Orbit Plus. Hang on a second. We're not trying to close the gap, we're trying to open it. I'm burning the wrong way. So you'll also note that the less burns that you do on the fly, the better. Are you serious? How am I still wrong? Shoot, this is the ascending node, not the descending node. Further inducing my point. See, now we're starting to waste fuel. This is what I didn't want to do. Okay, we should be passing right over the base now. Good enough. Whoops, wrong one. Again, I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I've turned horizon level now. (1,000 kilometers to the base. Let's go ahead and save here. Okay. Should be ready now for the final stages. For the heck of it, we're going to put our landing gear down now, because we can. at 3,700 miles per hour. No problem. No atmosphere. Hydraulic pressure on and gear going down.
Gear down.
Okay. Gears down, we have 3 lock lights. Excellent. 800 kilometers to the base. We should be picking up the VOR quite soon. I'm now going to go on to Pro 200 Spec 5, horizon level. And now we will be kept level to the horizon. Suspending. The map here should be keeping this marker on our HUD. So right there, looks to be directly opposite where we want to be, which is exactly what we want. Pro 200 Spec 5. There we go. And now this is the attitude that we're going to fire the engines in. Looks like we might be a little bit off, but we should be able to fix that on the deceleration burn. Suspend, move over a little bit, and re-enable. Okay, so this is what we're going to be looking at here, our vertical acceleration and our vertical speed. The acceleration tells us whether we're trending towards rising or sinking, and vertical speed, obviously, rising or sinking. We need to keep an eye on both of those. Fast forwarding time by 10 times the normal rate. Okay, the spaceport's now coming up over the horizon, so I am switching to VOR VTOL, and we have a VOR, and that is exactly where we want to be because we want to kill a little bit of velocity off to the side there. And now when this distance reaches 80 kilometers, that's when we hit the gas. And as we start slowing down, our vertical speed will drop, and once it reaches 50 meters per second, that's when we have to hold it. Probably could have been a little bit more accurate on the the stuff here. Hang on a second. I might not be aligned properly. Let's see if the base is over there, and then I fire my engines in this direction. That's going to put me... Yeah, that's correct. Okay, last time I did this I got the math screwed up because I got the equation wrong. So let's hope that I finally got the equation right this time. 78 kilometers is what I need to break. Except it's going to be a little bit more than that now because of this tangent now. Oh shoot, I don't want to do that. So about 80 kilometers. 190 kilometers, and very soon we should be able to... Can't get the pad yet. 180 kilometers. $160 kilometers. Oh man, yeah, this is pretty far off. I'm gonna have to be really good at winging it. Okay, there's the base. Maybe we'll start about 85. Okay, 98, 97, 95. 90, 87, 85. Deceleration burn. Okay, it's converged now, so we're going to rotate to full retrograde vector. We're at 70 meters per second now, so I'm going to stop the fall. And right there, that's exactly what we want. Go 200 spec 5. Okay, that was bad timing. 15 kilometers from now? Oh, well, we're almost directly overhead now. So I'm letting the, we're still very high, so I'm letting the velocity up a lot. I guess 50, we could say, was initial. We should be able to get... Seriously? Can't get pad 1 yet. Alright, well, we are still kind of really high.
Translation.
Did it again.
Translation.
There we go. Okay, before this gets away from us, now I'm going to hold that. Okay, we have a pad now.
Rotation. Translation.
So I'm going to start translating over to it. Still looking fine on fuel.
Rotation. Translation. Rotation.
There we go. Now we'll get there a lot faster. So, as seen in my other tutorials, what this is doing is centering us above the pad using radio.
Translation.
Okay, there's 5 kilometers. I'm now going to start increasing this now to 50 meters per second or so. Maybe a little bit more. $30 should be good. Okay. Let's kill all the rest of our horizontal velocity now. 10, 4, 2, 1.
You are cleared to land.
Okay, 0. We're dead above the pad now. We can descend a little bit faster. Why didn't I get the
2,500?
There it goes. I was about to say, why didn't I get the 2,500 kilometer meter call out? By the way, we're holding a velocity and our vertical acceleration is 0. The total g is 0.17 g. The reason why it's 0.17 is because this is the gravitational force of the moon. So we have nulled the we are fighting the moon's gravity, but we are still descending because we have a higher we have a relative velocity, if that makes any sense. Still looking fine. Let's do the before landing checklist. There's going to be 90,000 things wrong with it. Oh, okay. Maybe not. Well, there's no atmosphere, so no reason for that. Go 200 spec 5. Still want that all the way down to the ground.
1,000.
Okay, final approach now. Now to work the hover engines in a way that's going to be efficient.
500.
I guess what it really is it's a test of integration. It's how well can you integrate in your head.
400.
Okay, here's the base.
300. 200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Okay, slow to contact velocity. That is fine. 0.3 is just fine. Touchdown should be any second. And we have confirmation of touchdown. Thrust to 0. Disabling autopilot. And we're on the moon. It's night right now, so there's not really much to see. And this is it for the tutorial, because that was basically all it was, is getting from the Wallops Island, Virginia, to the moon. And here we are. So, I will see you guys next time. And, oh yeah. So very soon in Norris and Lantaniso we will be getting to space. So keep an eye on that. But meanwhile, this has been Dr. Aeronautics, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.